Joining me on the line, he is from the San Diego Union Tribune. You probably recognize the name, ladies and gentlemen, Bryce Miller, fresh off of Mardi Gras, back with us. Hey, Bryce, how you doing?
Yeah, back to reality, back to baseball, we hope.
Yeah. So the other day, and the reason you're on is to talk about this whole baseball lockout thing. I saw a deadline. They're like, yeah, if it doesn't happen by February 28th, we're not going to have enough time for the regular season or something like that. What's going on with baseball right now? If you break it down to brass tacks,
They're down to the wire, and some would argue past the wire, but it's such an arbitrary deadline, which initially was yesterday, and that's baseball's deadline. That wasn't the Players Association deadline, but baseball has said, again, arbitrarily, I think, that something had to be hammered out by the end of the day yesterday to guarantee the schedule, which would be 4 weeks of spring training, or guaranteeing a 4-week spring training schedule, and then have a full season. But now they met more than a dozen times yesterday, it sounds like, and today they're meeting. They started early. They've extended it through today. And then the question is, what does that mean if they go beyond that extension? Well, then I don't know that they all know what that means. I mean, it could be any degree of, this doesn't get done today, it gets done Thursday or Friday. And, well, that's not, somebody decides that's not enough time for pitchers and players to be physically prepared for that long of a season, and we're going to skip a week. Well, do you just skip a week and you have less games on the season schedule, or do you say it's only 1 week, let's sprinkle in some double headers and let's catch up along the way and make sure it's full 162? So the question is, the key question is how much spring training is necessary. Baseball's saying their deadlines are based on 4 weeks. Baseball has done 3 before, so that's been proven as possible. And I talked to some players, and one of them's a veteran pitcher for the Padres, a guy named Craig Stam, and he goes, we're all on our throwing routines we have for a month. They're doing the things they need to do to be physically prepared, but it's still a question mark people will bring up. And then if it's a longer period of time, then what's that look like? How many games are you playing in the season? And right now they're still, even today, going back and forth over key core economic issues. It's not like they've mopped up a lot of the important stuff and they're down to talking about, do we restrict the shift? Do we have 12 or 14 playoff games?
Yeah.
They've already announced a universal DH. Those are the smaller pieces of the game itself. It's the core economic issues that are what holds something like this up, and it still is. But I think the sign of them meeting so many times yesterday, starting early today, I think they feel like they're close. One of two things, or maybe both. They feel like they're close, or they're just feeling the pressure to get something done. Because now you're getting a lot of feedback from fans and other people who are tired of what they perceive as millionaires fighting with billionaires, which that's a broad brush, but you're not far off. That's just one of the facts. And so that's where all this stands. They're still chiseling away at really core economic issues as we wait to find out if there's a full season.
What is that core economic issue? Like, what's I think there's like 3 they're really arguing about, if I did my research right, or in that neighborhood. What's like the main one?
Well, the main one is, it's the competitive balance tax, or people call it the luxury tax. You'll hear both things. I don't have the exact numbers at this point, and it's fluid. It's changing like by the hour at some points, but I'll give you a range of what I know was close. The competitive balance tax, or luxury tax, if your team spends over whatever that threshold is, last year it was only 2 teams, the Dodgers and, believe it or not, the Padres, you pay a penalty on that's redistributed among teams. The reason that's important, not everybody can spend that money, so you can't just have the Dodgers spending $300 million a year because the Marlins can't.
Yeah.
But it also, the players this is a really important point for players. They don't want a hard salary cap. If you do that, it restricts stunt salaries across all of the game. That's more money left on the table that isn't possible for players. And it's not about the Justin Verlanders or Manny Machados who've made their money. It's the players coming into the league that haven't had that big contract. They're not into arbitration. They may only have 1 or 2 years in baseball. So it's the Players Association looking more broadly, not just the richest and most established, but the younger and trying to get established players. But the competitive balance tax, I think the owners had it at like 210, then they said they'll go to 214. We might be able to get to 220. The players started at, I don't know where it was, 240, 245, and they're talking about coming down to like 230. You're seeing it get closer, but they're agreeing on what that tax is. And it's not just that. It's what are the penalties when and if you go over that.
Okay.
Because if the penalties, and this goes back to a point I last made, if the penalties are too high, too restrictive, too punitive, it essentially creates a salary cap. So the players want baseball for competitive reasons, hence the name competitive balance act. They want a threshold so not, the biggest teams can't spend whatever they want every single year, but they're also threading the needle. They don't want it to be too much of a penalty where there are salary caps in baseball. So that's the key one you're going to hear over and over. There are other ones. There's a pre-arbitration bonus pool, and what that means, arbitration, once you've been in the league for a certain amount of years, you're eligible to go into arbitration to adjust your salary based on performance. Juan Soto is a great example of that, one of the best in baseball, not getting paid anywhere close to, he was part of that deal and his agent, and they made that decision. But, that money would be available to balance things out potentially for players before they can get to the arbitration level or get to free agency. It's a balancing of the scales. And what is that going to look like? Is that bonus pool going to be $20 million, $30 million? And how much does a certain player get versus another player in that situation? There's a lot of arguments, discussion, debate about how that's the metric, how that would be measured. So there's that. Those are a couple of the key ones. But again, like I said, there's so many other issues that a collective bargaining agreement, has to sort. Like we were talking about, the defensive shift. Is it the owners want more playoff games, 14, the players want 12. There's just a lot of baseball's business that gets decided beyond just the salaries and core economics. And so all that stuff is still being sorted right now. And to think they can get it done in a day, some signs of them meeting so much and the urgency that they're showing and extending it by one day makes you think it's possible it could get done late today, but there's still a lot of work to do, a ton.
Bryce Miller from the San Diego Union Tribune on the line with me right now. I think that brings up the easy next question. Is this going to hold up the season, do you think?
Well, that's the whole thing. We're right at the edge of we're at the very edge of the cliff for what the owners, unless it's just posturing on their part, which it very well could be. But the calendar and the schedule is the calendar and the schedule. Depending on whether you need 4 or 3 weeks of spring training as a minimum to get ready for a full season, if we can get a full season, they're right at the edge. Now, the players haven't really said what they think a deadline needs to be. Maybe in the back of their mind, they're thinking what I had said earlier, that pitchers have been on their throwing routines, and if we had 3 weeks, we could get it done. But the other thing you got to think about is even if they got it done tonight, you can't start spring training tomorrow. We're already 2 weeks in from when pitchers and catchers reported or something close to that.
Yeah.
And so you've got international players who've got to get to wherever, Arizona or Florida, from wherever they're at. Maybe some of them are here, but maybe not all of them. Maybe they have visa issues, COVID travel. To get everybody in camp, you just don't flip a switch and they're all there tomorrow, even if there's a deal. So they're probably feeling that pressure of, could they be here by the end of the week if we got it done today kind of thing? Maybe the bulk, and some would trickle in, but it doesn't, you don't get a deal today and start,
it's not instantaneous.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lag time on a certain number of days. So if you factor that in, we are getting close to could you miss games when you think of 3 weeks as spring training as a minimum. We're getting close to that once you build in that lag time. So, and again, I said earlier, it could be the kind of thing, if you miss a handful of games, you just make them up along the way, or is it more, and it would just be too difficult to reconstruct the schedule and you abbreviate the season to a certain number of games. And I think some are trying to avoid it. Some, the AP had a great stat today. I saw that they did an analysis and players would lose $20.5 million in salary each day of the season that's canceled.
Oof.
And so that's the kind of money in a single day that's on the table for players. But then owners, that's a debatable topic too, because they lose some money early in terms of ticket sales and merchandise, everything a full schedule provides. But a lot of these markets, and depending on weather, some of their weakest selling months are the earliest months where it's cold in the Midwest, or it's, and people haven't gotten into baseball. Baseball's this thing that's long and slow and builds momentum. And are you contending? And all-star game and trade deadline, but it starts slow other than opening day. And so some of these smaller market teams are probably like in the back of their head, we don't mind skipping a few of those days. We're paying players full salaries, and we're nowhere close to our full potential in ticket sales in our stadium. So all of that is kind of colliding, and it's the interest of those two groups. People think owners and players, but there are subsets inside the ownership group, for example, small market versus large market teams, and they don't always have the same agenda because they don't have the same resources, leverage, structure. So that's what makes it so hard to get that many voices in a room and get a deal hammered out.
Gut feeling, actually two questions that are kind of the same thing. You've been around baseball for a long time. How bad does this feel compared to other moments we've had like this? And if you're going to go with your gut, is it going to start on time? Do you think it will?
I would have told you a week and a half ago, probably a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, they were going to start on time. I just thought there was too much money at stake given the last 2 years. 2 years ago, you had a 60-game season because of the pandemic. Everybody left money on the table in a season like that. They got some games in, but it was only 60. And then you think about last year in certain states, like in California, early in the season, there was limited, restricted attendance. They were still walking the tightrope of COVID regulations. But then you had other states like Texas and the Rangers, hey, just let everybody in. So early in the season, certain teams in certain states were still feeling kind of the economic pinch on the owner's side, because of limited attendance. So after 2 years where there was some economic damage, you thought the incentive would be there to, hey, we've got to have a regular season, a normal season. We've got to get the economic train rolling again for everybody involved. So a week and a half ago, I thought that would be the incentive that would drive this thing. But now they're so close to the edge. If they get it done today, tomorrow, I think we have a full season that starts on time. If this thing lags into next week, we're going to miss some games, and can those be made up? What does that look like? And so that's where we stand, I guess.
All right. Bryce Miller from the San Diego Union Tribune joining me to talk about baseball. Bryce, we'll let you get back to your day because I know you got to go get new credit cards.
Well, yeah, little incident in New Orleans where I think they call it pickpocketing, but that's the cost of doing vacation business, I guess.
I think what's funny about it, I think every time I talk to you, you have some adventure that you just came off of, and it's something like that, or like interesting neighborhood.
Yeah, I would rather have the adventure without the actual criminal activity. If I could pull that off, that'd be great. But no, we had a great time. It was just 20 years since a bunch of us had gotten together down there, so big reunion, a lot of friends, a lot of fun. And but now, again, we're back to seeing if we have baseball.
There you go. All right, Bryce, you take it easy, all right, man?
All right. Yeah, you too.